What's up, you guys, and welcome to the official podcast of Damian Talks Education. So listen up. I am here to talk about all things education on my podcast. So get prepared for some realness and honesty of education as I walk you down through various of topics that's happening in the education world with some amazing guests, to sharing stories relating to education and so much more, because I got you covered with education. So join me on this journey of education with me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Damian Talks Education, and happy Friday! Yes, it's time to celebrate here at Damian Talks Education because it is Friday and we have made it through the week, you guys. So give yourself a clap. Yes. All right, you guys. So I'm back, you guys, sitting in my comfy chair, which means it's time to talk with all of you about my favorite topic, which is education. So today, you guys, I have loss and hope after a cluster of student suicide. Yes. And even now, you guys, we're still in this pandemic, and there are suicides happening during this pandemic because our students, they feel that they are alone and they don't have nobody right by their side, but they do. We just need to give them, the encouraging words to keep moving forward. And how can we stop this from happening? And I'll talk about this particular topic back in the first season. And as I share with all of you guys, back in season 1 as well, I believe that I share, my story with all of you guys, my college story, to where, I went out to college, to a university, and then, I came back and I started feeling weird, I became all depressed, didn't want to be by no one. And then you guys, at one point, I had so much things happening with me, going on in my head, that I just wanted to end it all and I wanted to commit suicide. So we need to stop this from happening, you guys. We need to stop this from happening. Now, get this, you guys, nearly 1 in 5 high school students seriously consider suicide in a year. And after a cluster of suicides, a district decides it's time to talk more frankly about the issue. That is what I'm talking about. We need to talk about this into our schools. It needs to happen, this conversation, this a very important conversation into our schools, because it is very much needed to have with our students and our educators and our parents. So I'm going to tell you guys a story of a school district who, was dealing, talk about student suicide and what was going on into their district. So you have a student named Jordan will never forget her junior year of high school. Now, within a span of several heartbreaking months, 3 peers at her high school, Clovis West, unfortunately died by suicide, 2 within just 2 weeks of each other. Oh my gosh. Now, a 4th student later died by suicide at nearby Clovis High School. Now, here is what the student said, Jordan. The climate on campus was dismayed. Every time the intercom went off to announce things, you were just waiting for the next student's name. Oh, wow. My goodness. Who called the experience back in 2016 through 2017 school year. And she says this: students felt like it was against the world, excuse me, let me go back. Students felt like it was us against the world. We're losing one friend after another. I can't imagine this happening. Unfortunately, this hasn't happened with my group of my classmates, but I can't, I cannot dwell on the moment of, hearing, your fellow classmates had died of suicide. And it's just sad, you guys. It is such a sad and traumatic um, experience. So I can't imagine, of this happening, with my group of students because, like I said, it's very sad and a traumatic experience. It's just devastated, you guys. So let's continue on here, you guys. And as you guys can tell, probably maybe at the beginning and probably maybe throughout this episode, my voice, you guys, is probably going to go you will hear it go a little high and then you will hear, go low. I don't know what's the case with it, but you guys, you just bear with me. And today, just bear with me here. It's just so, I'm growing up, so it's gonna, but anyways, besides the point, let's hop right back into this here. So, you have waves of fear, sorrow, and then of course, anger flood through the 43,000 student school system and surrounding suburban rural community in California's Central Valley. Now, for a time, a hush settled across campuses and in homes, and everyone seemed to struggle with what to say or do behind it. Now, for students like Jordan, there are many unanswered questions. Of course, health privacy laws limited the district from sharing intimate details about the deaths and without dedicated time to talk about what happened. Wow, 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 wow. Students felt they had no space to process their grief or even perhaps to share their own mental health struggles without shame. Now, let me stop this right here. Let me stop this right here because we kind of did an episode of this on my podcast, Future Educators Talking, with my co-host, of where, and then I think it's just mainly me talking about this here. And then of course, with my other co-hosts as well. But I don't understand this here. And I don't know if there's a right answer to this here or not. And then, of course, my co-host, they gave me, I asked them, what's your answer? What's your answer to what I'm saying here? And what I was saying is that I don't understand why schools don't allow, let me rephrase it. Some schools, not all schools, but some schools, they don't allow our students to share, to open up about their experience. Like, why is that? You don't want them to talk about their mental health struggles, what's going on personally with them, etc., etc. Be who they are. I don't understand. I don't understand schools like that in particular because that makes no sense to me here. You're just outcasting your students. Don't you care about your students? Don't you want to protect them? Don't you want, this and that for them? Well, why don't you let them open up about their experience? Talk about it. Talk about it. Why are you shying away from talking about particular topics, but you want to talk about other particular topics that seems important to you, but not others, like depression, mental health, especially mental health, suicide, the LGBTQ community, and goes on and on. You don't want to talk about those in your schools, but you want to talk about other things. I get it. I see. I see. And in particular, if I was still back in school, well, I'm in school now. I'm a college student, but if I was back in high school, middle school, and elementary school, going to those types of schools, no, I would find somewhere else to where I could find a school that I feel safe and comfortable of going to, and to where I can talk about whatever I want to talk about because I'm a student. I have a voice. Students have voice, and you should let them use their voice. So, and that just a bunch of baloney there. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know if I ever will, but that's one change that needs to happen into our schools there, in some of our schools. Now, some schools, they do this, and I applaud them. I applaud them very much. But the other schools, you need to up your game. You need to up your game. I don't know what's going on in your particular school, but you need to up your game. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Continuing on with this, in the uncertainty that followed, families began questioning whether the schools had significant resources in place to meet their child's social and emotional needs. Now, teachers were on edge, wondering what wondering signs they have missed and whether more students were at risk. And no one, not even the parents or friends, understood why it had happened. Wonder why. Looking for patterns, district leaders came up empty handed, and the students were different ages and different grades and hung out with different crowds. Mm. So, now here's what here's what a director of a local suicide prevention task force that worked with the district after the suicide, Noah Whittaker says this here. I think that the suicides caught a lot of people in Clovis unaware because they were expecting suicides to look a certain way. Isolated kids who are struggling and are alone. Well, well. And continues on saying they didn't realize that this issue can touch anybody else's lives. Wow. All right, you guys. So let's hop right into the hiding in plain sight. Now, unlike the concessions of California coastal cities, the Central Valley fans out across stretches of open space, frame against the backdrop of the towering um, areas. Known for long-standing success in academic and sports, the Clovis District gave off the impression that they had it all together, but unfortunately, they didn't have it all together. And the suicide cluster in 2016 chip away at that. Suicide has not been something that we really talk about. And even when we do, it's a whisper. Close the door, kind of a conversation. This is what Julie Barnett, who is the school's physiologist. There's been this fear among parents that I don't want to admit this is happening in my home, that if they come forward, their child will be labeled and they don't want to get into college. Well, now, while the tragedies felt deeply, personal, of course, the experience at the school have been shared by far too many school systems, including nearby Plato Alto in Marion. And I just said this here earlier, and I'm going to mention this again. Nearly 1 in 5 high school students seriously consider suicide during the course of a year, and suicide is the second leading cause of death for adolescents ages 10 to 19. This is according to the CDC, which you guys should be familiar with the CDC, during this pandemic. So yeah, now in the 10 years from 2007 to 2017, The CDC, they reported that excuse me, that rates for suicide attempts and suicidal ideations steadily climb up and are especially high for children in rural areas and students throughout the school year. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Um, so yeah, very interesting there because it seems like to me, and I don't know with you guys, but like every year, it seems to me it is going up and up and up, and it's not going down. And that is a problem, you guys. Every year, it is going up and up and up. And we need to decrease our student suicides. We got to decrease it, excuse me, not increase. We got to decrease, let it go down. We want lower numbers. I want lower numbers. I'm not going to speak on behalf of all you, but I want lower numbers. I want to have lower numbers of student suicides. That's what I want there. Um, so right now, you guys, I have a video um, playing that is a district response to student suicide. So check it out.
That year was a very, very challenging year. To have that cluster of suicides in a relatively short period of time had an impact on all areas of our community, where it really did shake those feelings of safety and predictability.
The climate on campus, it was dismal. It was scary. Every time the overhead went off to announce things, you were just waiting for the next student's name to be heard.
It was very hard as a teacher. I had a lot of eyes on my students trying to make sure that they were okay. I had a lot of one-on-one conversations with my students saying, "How are you doing? I'm concerned about you."
Someone feeling so hopeless, so alone, that they take their own life, that's heartbreaking. And that's something that no one wants to acknowledge as a problem because it shouldn't be a problem.
What we experienced as a community was really a reflection of society as a whole, and that is this reticence to talk about suicide. That's not something we talk about. Suicide is not an issue where we can blame one thing. So rather than pointing fingers, the focus was how can we create a healthier community?
So really not just thinking about the outcome of what happens when a student's in trauma, but what leads up to that. What are some preventative measures we can put in place that provide opportunities for students to seek out help?
So we're here to help reduce the stress in our lives, to take care of ourselves and provide support for each other.
Virtually every school is running support groups for kids. Last year, we ran over 250 groups that served just about 2,000 kids. And we've run support groups on a variety of topics like anxiety, depression, teen issues, divorce.
Last week, my anxiety started coming back really bad. So I've just been learning how to cope with that again.
We also developed some district-wide trainings in terms of suicide prevention.
The training is really focused on identifying those invitations for help, seeing those warning signs in the people around you, and then getting them to the support.
We want to ask this question very clearly, very directly, and without judgment. Are you thinking about suicide?
When we first started this conversation around suicide prevention, we had a lot of experts. We had teachers and administrators and counselors around the table. And it took us one meeting to realize that if we want to have a conversation about how best to reach students, it's not a bunch of adults standing around going, "I think this will work." It's students telling us what their needs are.
It's been kind of hard because my dad has just been avoiding the problem.
In peer counseling, it was students being there for students. We saw a really large array of issues people were dealing with, whether it be divorced parents, abusive households, struggling in school, suicidal ideation.
Kids don't tell their parents or their teachers, they tell a friend. So anything that we can do to get them to support each other is way more powerful than what we can do on the adult end.
Although we may not have the exact same stressors, we all deal with something. Does anyone remember any of the coping strategies?
Talking to other people about what you're going through?
We started the club because people who are struggling, they just feel alone. And they don't think anyone else thinks or feels the way they feel, but that's not the case.
Our job as an educational institution is to prepare kids for the world life after high school. Part of that is being able to deal with those day-to-day challenges that we all experience. So we're educating kids in terms of how to regulate your feelings, how to manage stress, how to deal with the anxiety that often is a part of growing up.
I think there just needs to be conversations because there isn't a cure-all solution to this problem. It's really just making a conscious effort day in and day out.
You can't teach a kid who is struggling and dealing with depression and anxiety and possible thoughts of suicide. That student is not going to learn your class unless they know they're cared for and they feel safe. And so we've been working really hard since 2016 to let our kids know we are trying our best to listen to them and respond to them.
I can very confidently say the word suicide and have a conversation with people about it without being scared of it. And I think that's huge, and it's something I'd like to spread to other people, just letting people know it's not a hands-off topic, it's something that needs to be talked about.
So as you guys seen in that video, a lot. You saw how that school district responded to the student suicides. So let's continue going through, you guys. Now, through high-profile celebrity suicides in recent years, it have brought suicide into the national spotlight. A long-standing stigma has shifted open dialogue, open up the conversation, enabling myths and misconception to fester, says some experts. Now, this can leave everyone, including educators, ill-equipped to respond after a tragedy like the school system, or to get students into interventions. And they need, before they, reach a breaking point, before, like how with me. Back in 2019, I had all these things happening in my head, and I was at a breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore, and I wanted to end it, my life. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because I am still here today. Thank you, Jesus. So yeah. Now, in responding to the suicides, the school district staff determined that expanding mental health resources such as counselors, while necessary, was not enough to meet all students' needs and could be a barrier that many children and their families might not overcome. Okay, now working very digitally, working together with support of professionals in the fields such as health and law, staff developed a multi-step into an effort to get everyone, teachers, parents, and students themselves involved into this to improve mental health and wellness on each campus. Now, parents' nights were convinced to improve this awareness, and teachers, they were trained in how to spot, the warning sign. In every campus, there was assigned a suicide prevention to turn, for help. But most important, people were encouraged to start having more conversations about suicide to reduce the stigma and shame. We need to have this conversation, you guys. We need to have it. Now, I think what we experienced as a community was a reflection of society as a whole. And that is this reticence to talk about suicide. That if we talk about it, we're going to plant the idea, says David Weber, one of the district's lead physiologists. But we know now that's not true. And if we're really going to prevent suicide from happening into our schools, we have to have people comfortable talking about it and even asking, the hard questions. Are you thinking about suicide? So, and that's my question with all of you guys, to my students who watch or listen to my podcast. That is my question to you as well. I'm asking you guys this hard question, and you don't have to, respond back to me or, leave it down in the comment section. But if you do, that's fine. But are you thinking about suicide at this moment right now? Because we're in this global pandemic. We have racial things still happening in our country, which is so sad and pathetic. And, we have everything else happening around the world. And you guys, especially, you feel that you are alone in this, that you have no one by your side. Some of you guys, I'm not speaking to all of you guys because, we're all come from different backgrounds. And some of you guys may not have homes, may not have, parents, siblings. You're on your own. You're living on the streets. You have been kicked out of your home for some apparent reason. You're having some difficulties inside your homes. The list goes on and on. And I just want you guys to know, and I'm speaking directly to those students, especially I'm speaking to all students, but I'm directly speaking to those particular students, that I, Damian Anderson, the host of Damian Talks Education, I am here for all of you guys. I am deeply here for all of you guys. I am willing, if you let me, I am willing to listen to your problems, to your experience, to your struggles, whatever that is going on inside of you. I am willing to listen deeply, hear your thoughts, hearing your voice, expressing your emotions, your feeling. I am willing to listen to all of it. So if you want to have that conversation with me, please contact me and let me know. Please, because I am willing to help you shape into the better person that you are, because you are special. You are special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Be the best. Here's my favorite quote here that I like so much. Be the best version of you and only you. Remember that. Always remember that. And if you ever need anything, I'm here to listen. So please contact me. I would love to hear your stories, because this is what it's all about, talking about it, having these conversations, because we don't allow our students to express themselves. Like I said earlier, we don't allow them to use their voice, and that is sad. But I am telling you this right now, that I, Damian Anderson, the host of Damian Talks Education, am willing to allow you to come onto my show and tell your story. And I am willing to listen. You are welcome. All of you are welcome to come onto my show and let's talk about it. So I am here for all of you guys, and I love each and every one of you. So I'm here for you guys. I am here for you guys. Now, speaking on students, let's talk about the teenage brain for a second, all right? So adults are not always clued into the goings on of a teenager's brain. You got that right, which can make it, a challenge to identify the underlying causes of their struggles and appropriate interventions. Now, Research shows that adolescence is a crucial developmental period, and teenagers experience emotions more accurately than any other age group. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Ugh, don't I remember those days? Ugh. Well, I mean, you could. Well, no, actually, I'm an adult because I'm 20 years old. Um, so, but don't I remember those days back in middle school, my middle school years, and going up to high school. Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah. So, and you have their brains, they are still developing, like judgment and impulse control. Now, the data also indicates that rates of anxiety, depression, and self harm are on the rise among our teens. Now, part of what we do as adults is downplay a lot of the experience that our teenagers have and think, oh, it's no big deal, or you'll get over it. Don't you? I don't like that. I don't like that there. And then they also said that we forget what it was like to be a teenager and struggle through that. Don't you think? Don't you think? Wow. So yeah, now as part of the prevention effort, the school district staff realized that they needed to hear from students about what would help most. And I'm gonna add in there every student, not just students, all students. And staff started inviting students to attend formally adults only meetings, wow, including them in planning groups to expand mental health resources on campus. Now, students, they were also encouraged to launch programs and resources of their own, which have since been shared between local schools. All right. All right. Now, you guys, I have another video coming up, you guys, about speaking up on teen stress. So check it out now.
I'm going to share a high and a low experience from this last week.
A low for me is I had my first anxiety attack like I want to say 3 days ago, so that's stressful.
I've had a lot of friends throughout my life that have really struggled with their mental health, and I felt like it was something that wasn't being taken seriously for people that were young. I do think student stress is getting worse. I mean, the majority of people I know were getting 4 hours of sleep a night, and it's like, I can't have a crisis right now, I'm too busy.
One of the main stressors is academics. The pressure to perform at a very high level academically, the pressure to just be well-rounded.
Being on a sport, trying to get into college, in general, things are more competitive. So there's just been this sort of like ramp up of the expectations and what you need to do to succeed.
It's unfortunate that in an attempt to make sure all of our students are successful, we're forgetting to acknowledge that student health has to come before academic success.
I almost didn't graduate. It was a struggle. I was going to classes and putting my head down and just kind of sleeping through classes.
I myself went through a really hard stage of depression my junior year where I didn't want to come to school and I didn't want to get out of bed.
I've known quite a few people who have been suicidal and have been very close to taking an attempt.
In high school, there's also that stigma or that idea of I need to be strong and happy and cheerful and like fit in.
Kids more and more, they're going home after school and they're isolating in their rooms and they're hanging out on their tablets or smartphones. And there's just this lack of support mixed with this false version of who people are and their success.
We definitely have a culture of perfection on social media in that we're trying to show our best lives even if we don't feel like we're living it.
It would have been nice if everyone at the school had some sort of idea that it was okay to talk about your problems. Everybody's got something that they should talk about and they shouldn't keep inside and have to deal with by themselves.
not everybody can talk to an adult. Maybe they need a peer to talk to, someone their age that might be going through what they're going through or have experience.
In high school, all of the stressful things all mixed together in a pot inside of you, and it's a lot to handle. Because kids are coming into teachers' classrooms every single day, it's important for those teachers to let kids know that they care about them.
It's okay to take that break from your curriculum sometimes to check on your students. You can't teach a kid who is struggling and dealing with depression and anxiety and possible thoughts of suicide.
We talk a lot about resiliency, and one of the things that makes a more resilient student is having an adult who cares about them.
All right, you guys. So I hope you learned something from that video of speaking up on teen stress. Like I said, we need to allow our students to use their voice. We need to allow them. Now, in a recent lunchtime meeting of the school-led Mental Health Awareness Club, more than 40 students have packed into an empty classroom at Clovis North High School, grabbing slices of Little Caesars pizza to eat while they talk. Now, maybe some people just come for the pizza, jokes the club president at that time, Taylor, who pays for the food with earnings from her summer job. And she says, but even if they do, at least they hear what we have to say. Now, passing around a stuffed white polar bear used as a talking stick, the club president asked the group to reflect on what's stressing them out, like homework, parents, relationships, and the strategies they have uncovered as a group to cope. And her hope in starting the club, which adapted the slogan, "You don't need to be diagnosed to work on your mental health." Ooh, I love that. I like that. You don't need to be diagnosed to work on your mental health. Was making sure that no one felt alone. Now, you got that right. You got that right. Students are not alone. We're all in this together. And her enthusiasm for seemingly all things, she also captained of the school cheerleading team, and she does not mask the struggles she and her classmates has faced. Now, several of her friends have experienced suicidal thoughts and came close to attempting suicide. And she says, candidly, and she did what she felt best. And she told them they matter and referred them to a trained professional for help. That's what I'm talking about right there. A true friend right there, looking out for the best of others. Good for you, Taylor. Good for you. All right, you guys, let's move on into our last bullet point, which is talk more. Talk more. Now, handmade photo collage and posters, the handwork of students cover nearly every inch of wall space and Derek's David classroom at Clovis East High School. And then you have, all scattered in bright colors, messages like end the stigma and be the change. Encourage students to seek help when they struggle. Now, in the back corner of the room, like back here, for example, in the back corner of the room, a box filled with neon green ribbon pins and little cards with the number for the suicide hotline waits to be handed out for suicide awareness month. And I will give you guys, that information at the end of this episode. Or they will be down in the description. I'll just say that, okay? Now, Davis is a former water polo coach, and his cheery, down-to-earth nature has a magnetic effect on students who come to his peer counseling class 4 days a week, ready to explore topics that many teenagers are afraid to discuss, like depression, anxiety, isolations. And a lot of times, students just want to know that people will listen to them and that their voice will be heard. That's what I just got through just saying. Yes, 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 yes. Um, Now, peer counseling is just one of the many programs the district is running these days to assist students with their challenges. Now, throughout the year, peer counselors at every secondary school receives instructions on topics like judgment, listening, and open-ended questions. So they are prepared to run counseling sessions independently with fellow students who can self-refer or be referred by staff. So yeah. Now, if a student mentions self-harm or suicidal thoughts, peer counselors are instructed to immediately go to a teacher or counselor at their school, for some help. And you guys, I have up next a last video to show you guys of students who tackle life challenges in their lives. So check it out right here.
Okay, figure out who's going to talk first, and the other person just listen.
Hi, my name is Joseph, and you are?
Jada.
Have you ever heard of our peer counseling program?
No. Everything we talk about is confidential, which means that...
Peer counseling is a program that is here on our campus to help our students, our staff, and each other just kind of navigate through life.
How'd that make you feel?
We're not psychologists, we're not telling people what to do. We're just simply being there to listen to them and let them know that their voice will be heard. Just one thing to remember, don't give advice. We're just listening and try to help them to work through whatever they're going through.
As a peer counselor, I saw people struggling with eating disorders, to just fighting with their parents. A lot of students had struggled with grades or feeling like they didn't fit in, they couldn't be who they were.
Not everybody can talk to an adult. Maybe they need a peer to talk to, someone their age that might be going through what they're going through.
A lot of kids don't have that at home or don't have that in their friend group, just people who understand and want to listen to them. It's been kind of hard on me. High school's been a big adjustment for me.
When they do peer counseling sessions, the students maybe walk in the hallway, they sit outside the classroom, they kind of fill out the situation and they go with that. In the class, we will work on a lot of things to build up to the counseling session. We'll work on empathy activities, posture, nonverbals.
The biggest thing that I've learned in the peer counseling program is definitely how to listen.
I haven't been able to catch up with all my homework. I don't know what to do. Have you tried talking to your teacher?
That's a good suggestion, but don't forget to ask him too, how does that make you feel? Ask him about his feelings.
Person one is to sit and not react. What the other people in your group are gonna do is they're gonna talk about, say, person one first.
I feel like she's the type of person that just likes things on certain days and then the next day she's like, oh my gosh, I hate it.
We'll do lessons on judgment, designed to help our students understand how we see people. How did it feel to make assumptions or judgments about the person?
I felt bad if my assumptions were wrong.
So that way they're able to listen and not pass judgment on them and give those people time to talk. How are we gonna take this forward? You might hear something there's nothing that teaches you in your teacher preparatory program about how to teach a class like peer counseling. I go from here's a cell, here's how the cell's gonna function, to we're talking about feelings. And I hear some heavy things from my students.
In high school, all of the stressful things all mixed together in a pot inside of you, and it's a lot to handle. Stress at home and stress at school, pressure from parents, peer pressure is a huge issue.
Students are not getting the help they need because it goes back towards that stigma, that fear of if I show this part of me, how will they think of me? Instead of really taking a step back and really trying to understand themselves better.
A lot of people don't want to be seen as weak, but it's not something that makes you weak. It's just something that you have to get help with.
When I can't deal with it, I just don't, because
I myself went through a really hard stage of depression my junior year where I didn't want to come to school and I didn't want to get out of bed. So when I was finally able to get into therapy and get better, I just wanted to help other people get better.
I feel that the more that we talk about it, the less power it's got over everybody.
So I think it's really important that people know the resources out there.
These are issues we've been dealing with for a long time, but this generation's more willing to talk. They will let you know, I'm dealing with anxiety, I am depressed. They will speak up if you're willing to listen. And so by having these resources on campus, we can get them talking. A lot of times when we get them talking, we can really get them the help that they're gonna need.
All right, you guys, moving on. So the school peer counseling program recognized the research that shows children are more likely to find, places, solaces in peers than adults, and that emotional support from classmates can improve students' sense of belonging and engagement in the schools. Now, according to a AP biology teacher and peer counseling teacher at Clovis West High School, programs like peer counseling have been crucial in opening the doors for conversations that have historically, been hard to have or not even discussed at one point, which are raising the awareness that it's both common and okay to struggle with your mental health. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I went through that. I went through that. So this teacher went on to say, who was working at the school back in 2016 when 3 of her students, oh my gosh, died by suicide, says it can feel like change is happening slowly, but she believes it is. Now reflecting on her own experience as a student at the school back in the 1990s, she remembers a friend who didn't go on a field trip, a school trip, whatever you want to call it. And no one knew why. But later she learned that her friend had attempted suicide. But it was never talked about. Her friend made more attempts in college. Wow. Now for her, she said that it's important to let teachers know that it's okay to take that break from your curriculum sometimes to check on your students. That's what I'm talking about. You have to have that relationship with your students. Right? Relationships is key. Relationship is key. Relationship is key. And you can't teach a kid who is struggling and dealing with depression and anxiety and possible thoughts of suicide. You just can't do it. Now that student is not going to learn in your class unless they know that they are cared for and that they feel safe. Okay? So you guys, that is the episode on today, you guys. Now, before I wrap up here, if you or someone you know who is struggling with suicide thoughts, you're not alone. So you could call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. And they provide free help, you guys, 24/7. So remember that you are not alone. You are not alone. So I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode here. And please, 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 again, before I end, have this conversation into your schools, please. Encourage other schools, if you can, to have these types of conversations as well. And then to all my students out there who feel alone and isolated during this time, remember that you are not alone. You are not alone. We are all here for you. I am here for you here at Damian Talks Education. And if you ever want to come on and talk and share your stories, your experience, what you're going through, whatever the case, you are welcome to come on and let's have the conversation together. And I am willing to listen to whatever you have to say. So, and that is a promise there. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you guys next time on Damian Talks Education. So until then, you guys take care of yourself and be blessed and enjoy your weekend.